Hi everyone, welcome to the channel or welcome back to the channel. So I have an interesting relationship with the show Grotesquerie created by Ryan Murphy. This is his follow-up to Monsters. It has Nicholas Chavez. I've done a long video on the first 4 episodes on this channel. So if you've watched that video, you can hopefully keep up here. This is a video discussion of basically episode 5, 6, and 7. And my issue with this show, right, is I initially came out swinging and was defending it and championing it. I thought it was a bold vision for TV. I thought it was really creative and striking and just kind of visually cool. I liked that Ryan Murphy was really swinging for the fences. It reminded me of what made the early seasons of American Horror Story great. And then I've been sitting there since making that video week after week with this pit in my stomach, thinking, oh, I recommended this show to people and now they're watching it and it's getting fucking stupid, But then even worse is I was considering doing a video redacting my recommendation, being like, please, I don't want to ruin my reputation. Do not watch Grotesquerie. It's just getting stupid. But then I got to episode 7 and now I'm really interested again. So it's a complicated recommendation. Like, almost watch it as a strange little art piece, Not everything hits right. There's weird stuff. Episode 5 and 6 were genuinely unbearable for me. I thought they were so bad. Nothing landed emotionally. I wasn't tense. I wasn't interested. Everything just felt like a weird fever dream. And it was getting to a point where I was like, I actually might stop watching this show because it just feels like weird dream logic and nothing makes sense. And then episode 7 happened. And confirmed that what we've been seeing is basically just a woman's comatose fictionalization of her real life, right? She's in a coma and she's kind of hearing people talk and thinking about memories of her life and creating this fantasy world that she's operating in. And then I look back on the show and I go, wow, in terms of executing that weird dreamlike state, they did an incredibly good job. I don't think I've seen a show capture what being in a bad dream feels like better than this show. So now, even though I thought episode 5 and 6 were just slow and clunky and nothing made sense and it was all stupid, and I just was like, how did Ryan Murphy get all the money to make this nonsensical script? Now I'm sort of like, oh, I should go back and watch Grotesquerie from the start, knowing what I know. So let's really get into it. Obviously, the whole show is spoiled if you've watched up to this point. I'll put spoilers in the title, but spoilers. But let's talk about it, right? So episode 5 happens, and I was really praising that in episode 4. It felt like, okay, they're bringing in supernatural elements. They're implying that because the priest and the nun had sex, the world is kind of ending, and the show's really gone full pelt into supernatural. And I was like, you know what? It's good. Like, either shit or get off the pot, and I like that the show just went for it. Then we get to episode 5, and it was just too much. Characters would see something insane. Like, there's a guy that works at this motel that they stop at, and he just randomly starts beating up random women just in the open in front of them, and no one really seems to care or do anything. Like, our main character Lois is just kind of like, hey, stop that. What's going on? This is so strange. And I was sitting there infuriated because I was like, we're watching a show with actual stakes and real characters. Why are they responding this way? Like, there's literally a point where Lois sees something genuinely demonic or unexplainable. Like, this guy is dunking this woman's head in the pool, and the pool is a different color. Like, episode 5 literally looks like hell is turning over, and Lois just kind of comes out and goes, this is so weird. It was really strange. It was really strange. She genuinely responds like it's just a regular Tuesday. And at some point, the nun actually gets shot. At this point, we think she's died. And Lois is just kind of like, it was weird. It was a weird episode. And I was just like, I kind of like what they're going for here. It was like a one take. It was really impressive. But you're seeing a spectacle of violence and apocalyptic feeling imagery. And yeah, all the characters are just kind of responding very, very strangely. And again, this is made better by the fact that the twist in episode 7 is that it's a figment of Lois's imagination. It's this dream she's in while she's in a coma. That's an excellent twist, and I can't wait to watch the show again knowing this. But yeah, while I was in it, I was like, I'm going to have to redact my recommendation because this is rough. Then we get to episode 6, and bro, I can't even tell you episode 6. It was so bad. It was genuinely bad. It left the kind of dreamy feeling, a bit more. And all I remember from episode 6, really, all that jumped out to me is at the end, she shows up to another Grotesquerie crime scene. And in this crime scene, there's a bunch of women being milked like cows, like cattle. And then some random masked figure jumps up behind her and she shoots the masked figure and the episode ends. And the person I was watching it with was like, oh, who do you think it is? And I was like, I don't think the show fucking cares. I don't think the show's done a good enough job of making us care, to be honest. Like, it's a masked figure. It's the similar issue I had with Longlegs is you've only introduced 3 or 4 characters in this entire show. So there's only like 2 people it can be that either make sense or emotionally satisfying, right? Like, it has to be the nun or the priest or like a figment of Lois's imagination, and it's definitely not Lois's daughter because it's like a tall, slim-looking person. So it's like it's going to have to be Nicholas Chavez or the nun. Then the next episode starts, all right? So episode 7 starts, and it just starts at a random point. Travis Kelce's back, and he's been in a relationship with Lois's daughter, and they're not talking about who the Grotesquerie was, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And it's just a bunch more scenes where you're like, am I meant to be feeling something? Like, what is this? What are we watching? And then you get to the halfway point of the episode and Lois gets stabbed by the nun. And I was like, okay, this show is actually bad now because Lois has just died. I don't care. I don't really care about anything that's going on. And I miss how this show used to feel. But then the episode reboots. All right, now the scenes you saw earlier at the start of episode 7 are now happening again, but it's from Marshall's perspective. Marshall, not me, Marshall is Lois's husband, right? And he's been in a coma, but turns out now he's awake and Lois is in the coma. And turns out that all these characters we've been watching, right, are people in the real world, but they're not who they were in the dreamland. So, like, for example, the sexy priest is actually the doctor. Lois's daughter is still Lois's daughter, but she has a marriage with Travis Kelce's character, and that was disrupted because Travis Kelce and Lois started knocking boots. So it turns out, Lois is also a cheat, and she is still an alcoholic. That's important to note. But it feels like these Grotesquerie murders and this fantasy world she kind of like created for herself is her brain's kind of way of handling her guilt and her complicated like familial dynamics. It's really quite interesting. Like episode 7's midway point is so fascinating because you get all these characters and you know some of the stuff about them, but you're kind of saying, okay, what lines up as a one-to-one and what lines up as a metaphor, like Nicholas Chavez is still in a position of authority and power, but not the exact same, right? Instead of a priest, he's a doctor. And Lois's daughter does have a relationship with Travis Kelce, but this time it's a marriage and it's a crumbled marriage because of Lois. The big infidelity here is actually Lois's rather than Marshall's. Now, don't get wrong, Marshall is still not faithful and he's knocking boots with the woman that was the nurse. And I think that fixes a lot of my issues because the nurse character was driving me up the wall. And fortunately now I can rewatch the show and go, okay, well, nurse character is in dream logic. And it's Lois's paranoia that Marshall was going to cheat on her because she cheated on Marshall. And as we see, he was. So overall, I'm really fascinated, right, for the next 3 episodes because I really want to learn who all our characters are in the real world. Unfortunately, the one thing is I was kind of enjoying the spectacle, especially early on, of the Grotesquerie murders. But thankfully, I was never fully into the mystery of who it was. I was never really, it wasn't one of those serial killer movies or shows where I'm like, oh, find the guy, get him. It never captured me that way. But I feel like now, knowing what we know, knowing that it's set in a coma, feels like it's entirely the point. I also need to commend FX, Hulu, Disney for throwing this much money at something that basically pulls the it was all a dream twist. And I also have to give credit to Ryan Murphy for pulling this twist off like this late in the game and then giving us like 3 or 4 more episodes to kind of wrap it up and make it satisfying. Like we get 3 more hours to see what the real world is like. I'm really curious to see if he can pull off a satisfying narrative in this way. I like it. I can't recommend it fully anymore. I get why people don't like it. I get why people aren't going to watch it, but I do find it interesting. Unfortunately, it's just sort of this thing of like a lot of the analysis initially is going to have to be redacted because, we were operating under false pretenses. So I'm really curious. Maybe when the full season is out, I'll do a full video review, go back and watch the season and see what lines up perfectly, what you can glean from Lois's sort of imaginary world she was living in compared to her real life. I just admire that a show on this scale has pulled off this twist in a way. I admire that a studio greenlit it. It is mixed results for sure, but I'm definitely curious to see where this show goes from here, because now you can kind of forgive all the moments where the mystery wasn't landing and certain stuff wasn't making sense because it was never meant to. It is just a shame though, because the appeal initially of this show was the spectacle of these grotesquerie murders, and they were all in her head. Also interesting to note that the nun is a cop. The nun is who Lois is pretending to be. I'm really curious to see if there is a grotesquerie properly in the real world, like if the same murders are happening. From what I gathered, the nun, the cop, is looking into the abuse of the women that were being abused in the motel in Lois's dream, if that makes sense. So I don't know if that's the real life grotesquerie and Lois has just expanded on that in her head. But yeah, I said I'd talk about this show on my channel, so I've talked about it here a bit more. I would love to do long 20, 30-minute deep dives into each episode, but unfortunately I've found this show a bit frustrating initially as I've been watching it, and I haven't had too much to talk about. But now I feel like I could. So I'm really tempted when the whole season is out, if it ends well, to do a full video review. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's just a quick one today, but I really do appreciate it. Please subscribe if you want more content from me, and have a lovely day. Thank you.